Hello, my name is Danny Gray. I'm a senior consultant at PTI Worldwide. This session is all about how we are wired as human beings. I guess we live in a world where communicating and engaging with others is a fundamental part of what we do, and coordinating our behaviour around that becomes an essential part of relationships and driving and building not just ourselves forward, but also the businesses and the areas in which we operate in. And I think understanding how we are wired and what makes us human beings function and operate the way they do is an important part of that journey, and taking some time to reflect on yourself and the things that matter most to you, I think, are an important part of that process. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about is the fundamental basics of that, what that means, and perhaps some of those questions that you could ask yourself in that time or period of reflection. As with many of these things, don't just do this on a whim. It's worthwhile investing some quality time into understanding yourself and perhaps identifying some of those things that matter most to you. Now, I split this into something called the 5 interlocking human drivers. There's 5 fundamental basic pillars that every one of us has deep rooted in our core, and that help us to understand a bit about why we do the things we do, what matters to us most of all, and perhaps how that influences our thinking or behaviour. Now, if we start with the very first one, the first one is certainty. So certainty is quite simple, really. Everybody needs a level of certainty in their lives. Think about the things that are important to you. Certainty perhaps around income and protecting that income. Certainty around your job or your job's expectations. Maybe it's about the way that you do things in your personal life and the things that matter to you. So my few questions when it comes to certainty. The first one is this, is how strong is your need for certainty in your life? So how important as to you? So some people need absolute robust clarity and certainty around everything. So if you're the sort of person that when you're planning a holiday, you don't just plan to go to a particular place, you plan what you do on every day, you plan where you eat every meal, you plan what each hour of that day looks like, then it's likely you're somebody that requires lots of certainty around them. If you're more somebody that flies by the seat of your trousers, you just kind of go with the flow, see what happens, then of course you must have a lesser need for that. Second question then is, does that vary to certain parts of your life? So in other words, is it you go, actually, I need certainty in my job, for example, but in my personal life, I can afford to just let that run its course and take its shape, because that's going to affect some of those real simple fundamentals for the way you do things. Then it's then. Are there certain times in your life, not even certain situations, where certainty is less important to you and perhaps being a bit more adventurous is what you're looking for? And by focusing on that area alone, it starts to help you to understand the importance of that certainty, leaving you to the last of my questions, which is quite simple. What's the difference between those moments or those scenarios? In other words, what does that tell me about me? So I like certainty in this situation or this scenario, yet oddly enough, the next day I could be in this situation, and I like the spirit of adventure. Because helping me to understand that is that starting point for understanding about how I'm made up and how I'm wired. My second interlocking stage is adventure. Now that kind of lends itself well. So we've touched on the need for certainty, and I mentioned in that stage around the need for adventure. Well, adventure is your bit of living on the wild side. You know, your willingness to let go, rescind control, and give that out to the world. And I guess the balancing point between these two things is a really important part, because if you're somebody that really needs certainty, then it could be that adventure and that uncertainty is a much smaller gap than somebody that's happy to just go with the flow and let things happen. And if you think about how that impacts on relationships between others, and you'll probably be familiar in your role or perhaps your professional career where you've seen a difference between those two things, where somebody's swung towards perhaps a more certain way of doing things, but surrounded by those that live a bit more adventurously and are willing to let go of that control. So here's my questions for you. Does the sense of adventure resonate with you? That's the first thing. Do you go, well, actually, I quite like the idea of adventure. It fills me with enjoyment and satisfaction. Or does it fill you with fear? Is it something that you think, oh my word, just the thought of being adventurous and spontaneous is something that is just beyond your scope or reach? If you could inject more adventure into your life right now, what would it be? So if you thought, do you know what, I probably could do with a bit more of that, what would that look like? What would it take? What shape would it take, and how could that affect you and what you do? And I think that's such a powerful question to go, right, okay, what would it be? But maybe, what do I need in order to go out there and do it? Because knowing something and not doing anything with it is kind of the same as not knowing it at all. So don't just answer that question. Start to think about the steps that you might take in order to get there. My third driver is significance. Quite simple that. We all need a sense of purpose. We all need to stand for something. It's a natural human being attribute that means that we represent or be somebody in the world in which we live in. And I guess some of my questions for that for you to ask yourself are quite simple. First of all, a bit like the last one, how strong is your need for it? Some people absolutely need to feel somebody. They need to feel that all of the time. You may say, yeah, that's me. You may say though, no, it's not. Do you know what? I know who I am and I know the part I play. I don't need others to tell me about it. Second question, what areas of your life do you crave more of it? You see, sometimes it may be in your professional life that you seek it out more than you do in your personal life. Maybe in personal relationships, close, intimate relationships, you require that level of significance, but perhaps in your work life you don't. Maybe with certain people, even in your work life, your boss or your boss's boss, you require that level, but perhaps with your team, less so. I always think in our social circles as well, I know certainly from my own experience, I have a very varied social connection with my close friends, and each one has a different need for this. Some like to be the centre of the attention and make sure that they're somebody that people listen to. Others will drift into the background and are quite comfortable in that position. My third one, what positive behaviours and negative or derailing behaviours does this bring out in you? So in other words, what good behaviours are you demonstrating in order to get what you require from significance? But are there any derailing behaviours, things that get in the way, arrogance, rudeness, even something as simple as talking over somebody might be a sign that your level of need for significance is quite high and you'll kind of stop at nothing in order to get your voice heard. Well worth taking a step back, look at your surroundings, look at what's taking place, and whilst you may feel that you have something to say, you may have something to add to that discussion, maybe now is not the right time. Maybe that behaviour isn't going to portray you in the way that you perhaps would want people to see you as. My fourth driver, the need for belonging. Quite simple, being a part of something. We all like to be a part of something, whether that's through the type of cell phone that we use and we become a part of a community, whether that's the activities that we do in our personal life, or how we fit into a wider team in an organisation. Great question. What areas of your life do you really need to feel that you belong? Where does that matter most of all? Take some time to reflect on that and really think about which parts of it matter to you. Because, second one, what places or certain groups of people do you really feel that you belong? Where do you feel at home? Where do you feel most comfortable? Where do you feel yourself? Because feeling yourself as a personal development opportunity is so unbelievably important. Being true to ourselves, being true to who we are, can really help us to live the best life that we possibly can and be the best versions of ourselves. Final question, what's the difference between those places or groups of people for which you're happy and to belong, and perhaps those where you need to be more significant? And what does that mean? What's that telling you? What actions can you take to do about it? And most importantly, how quickly can you begin to start to differentiate the difference between belonging and being or feeling significant? My final driver is the need to grow. From the moment we are born as human beings, our appetite for learning accelerates significantly quickly. If you ever spent time around a small child, you know their need to understand, while their brain is very empty of information, their need to understand is great, really great. As we go through our later single-digit years into teenage years and perhaps into our adult lives, that appetite for development and growing starts to subside. It's important we keep it in check, because it can be quite easy to become complacent about learning and switch off our desire or need to grow. Yet actually, for fulfillment in life, growing and development is a fundamental part. It's a fundamental human driver. So just look at some of these questions. First one, how focused are you of fulfilling your need for that growth? So is it something you talk about on a day-to-day basis? And what actions are you taking right now to do something with it? Reading a book, watching a video, spending some time with somebody, attending a training program, whatever it may be, what are you doing about making sure that your hunger for growth and your hunger for personal development continues to get fulfilled and continues to get satisfied in your world? Then, what steps can you do to make sure you grow every day? Make it a daily occurrence, that way it becomes habitual. Don't just dip in and out of it when time allows. Allocate a small amount of time either side of each day just to make sure you invest some time in yourself, and then make sure you put in place some measurements. How will you know that you've been successful? So there you have it, my 5 fundamental human drivers. All very, very, very simple to get our head around, but all require a level of investment of time, effort and energy. Thank you very much once again for watching this session. For now though, my name's Danny Gray and I will look forward to seeing you again next time.